Hi, welcome to Melissa's Money Mindset. With financial and money goals typically at the forefront of everyone's mind, especially going into a new year, I thought that it could be particularly beneficial to make an entire video dedicated to exactly how to make a budget and actually stick to it. So if budgeting is something that you've been struggling with, then be sure to stick around. And before we get into the video, if you could please do me a huge favor and like this video, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you never miss another money-making tip. Let's get right into it. Now, if you feel like money has been running your life instead of the other way around, let's get to fixing that and put you back in control of your finances. Today, I've got an easy 7-step budgeting plan to help you get back on track and that you can implement today. Step number 1 of our 7-step plan is to calculate your net income, also known as your take-home pay. Now, the equation to use here is your net income equals your total income minus your total expenses. So think deductions like taxes, insurance, retirement contributions, any interest payments, basically anything that is deducted from your paycheck prior to it being deposited into your bank account. Now, if you're a W-2 employee, things like health insurance payments or maybe even retirement contributions are things that would be allocated and deducted from your paycheck prior to it being deposited into your bank account. So if you are a W-2 employee, sit down and see how much is actually deposited into your bank account either every few weeks or every month. Add those up for the entire month, and that's your monthly net income. Now, if you're a freelancer or you're self-employed like me, things can get a little bit more complicated, but not to worry, there's still a general equation to use. So generally, your net income is your business income minus your business expenses. So if your income tends to fluctuate, it might even be helpful to look at what you earned last year and see what your monthly net average income was. And it might also be helpful to determine what your lowest earning month was last year, and then essentially base your current expenses off of that lowest earning month, assuming that's kind of a worst case scenario, just to be on the safe side. So I just wanted to provide a quick example here for self-employed people or freelancers that might be watching. So I have some income that's paid directly to my businesses, from which I pay myself payroll. And then I also have some income that's paid directly to me. So again, the combination of my payroll income and my direct income would be my net income. So once you've determined exactly how much you make per month, the next step in our budgeting process is to figure out exactly how much you're spending and exactly what you're spending your money on. And I guarantee you'll be surprised. Now, I personally use a good old-fashioned Excel spreadsheet, but you can use obviously whatever you want, pen and paper, Google Sheets, or any number of finance apps. Now, one more thing I wanted to point out in this section of the video is if you do use Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, then you do have access to all of these budgeting templates, which I highly recommend that you take advantage of. So all you have to do is go to the Microsoft Store, type in budgets here, and you can use all of these budgeting spreadsheets for absolutely free. So these are a few of my favorite, the simple monthly budget. This is what it looks like. It tells you your income and your expenses, and you can very easily toggle through your monthly income, which we just discussed here, and also track all of your monthly expenses right here. Of course, you can add more rows. You can customize this all as you want to, and then see your summary at the very end. This is another one that's a little bit more detailed called personal budget, but I really like this option because it shows you your yearly spend over here. It tracks on a graph for you your spending habits essentially so that you can see, oh, I spent a lot here and then I decreased it and spent nothing. And it really separates things out into daily living, transportation, entertainment, health, vacations, recreation, all the categories that you could possibly think of, and then gives you your total expenses and your cash short or extra here at the bottom. So for most people, you'll probably just have a personal checking account, maybe a few credit cards that you have to go through, but make sure that you're going through each of these individually and writing down every single line item. It doesn't matter if it's 50 cents or if it's $5,000, make sure that you're putting it into your spreadsheet. And I go through all of my personal accounts and every single business account that I have and separate everything out. So this is essentially how I like to organize my own personal Excel spreadsheet. So you can see I've got the month labeled at the top here. And then below that, I start with the need category. So we'll talk about that further in a minute. But these are basically all of my non-negotiables. So my mortgage, my insurance, dental insurance, vision insurance, health insurance, those kinds of things, cell phone, internet, utilities, groceries, gas, to get around all of those things. Then in the next category, I break this down into recurring charges. So these are things that happen every single month. that are just set up as auto payments. And then the next category is wants. So you can see I treat my dog more than I should. And Amazon takes way too much of my money. And then there's usually, obviously other items down here. As the month goes on, this will continue to fill out. And then if you scroll down, since I am self-employed, you can see all of my business expenses. So my payroll fee, my Amazon Prime membership business fee, Amazon ads, Google, Apple, all the things that I have to pay to just keep my businesses up and running. And then I'll have all of my income streams listed here and then exactly how much each one of those made. But usually those are not deposited until the end of the month. So I can't do that for February quite yet. And then here's where I'll calculate my payroll amount. So again, you can use whichever method works best for you. I just wanted to show you what I personally do since my situation's kind of unique. So the point of showing you all of those different ways was that you can see that you can really customize this and make it whatever you want it to be. The next step here is setting goals. So ask yourself, why do you actually want to get your finances in order this year? And you'll probably find that there are likely short-term and long-term reasons for this. So that's perfect. Let's break it down that way. So for short-term goals, for example, maybe you'd like to save up for a down payment on a house, or maybe you'd like to save up to go on vacation, or a very important short-term goal could be saving your emergency fund. So I will link to an emergency fund calculator that I think is really helpful. So again, make sure that you have a minimum of 3 to 6 months of basic living expenses set aside. I personally prefer 12 months because I'm self-employed. And then some examples of long-term financial goals could be saving for retirement, saving to pay for your kids' college, or even their wedding. So no matter the goal, make sure that you are explicitly allocating money to each goal every month, as you obviously can. So make sure that it's its own line item in your spreadsheet, just like the future house fund I'm showing here, so that you can see exactly how much you're contributing to it. Now, obviously, you don't have to commit to the numbers that I'm showing in this exact spreadsheet. I will leave that up to you to decide because it depends on a few factors. And those include 1, how much money you make or how much money you have to allocate to these items. 2, how much money each of these goals costs or is. And 3, how quickly you want to reach these goals. Step number 4 in budgeting is make a plan. So this is where change and next steps really start coming together. And this is where you can really start to see that difference between how much you're actually spending and how much you want to be spending. So for example, let's go back to this spreadsheet. So monthly income, if it's just you, then you can delete these other incomes. Or if you just have one day job, that's completely fine. You can just have income number 1 here and you can delete these other few. But maybe you have a spouse or a partner, or maybe you have some side hustles or other businesses. So you can include those right here. And again, this first step is figuring out what your take-home pay actually is. And then on the next page here under monthly expenses, we'll focus on fixed expenses first. So either your rent, how much you pay in rent, or as a mortgage, any utilities, maybe you have a car payment or car insurance that you pay on monthly, any cell phone bills, internet, cable, or streaming services, maybe gas, groceries, and then maybe setting money aside for a savings account or emergency fund. And then below that, you can see some of these personal care items, some entertainment, some miscellaneous items. So basically everything else falls into the variable category. And another thing that you can do here that may potentially be helpful is highlight these. So this is an absolute non-negotiable. These are pretty much all non-negotiables. So I like to highlight those all in green. You can say personal care. I don't know what that specifically was for the month, so I'm going to highlight that in yellow. Obviously, personal care is important, but we don't want to overspend. Not saying that $50 is overspending. I'm just using this as an example. And then maybe you blew too much money, or this $100 really was not in your budget for the month. So I'm going to highlight this in red. So this is just a quick and easy way that I personally like to go through sometimes and very quickly highlight things that say, yes, these are all approved. I don't have a problem with this. These are fine, but just be careful. And then this red category, I'm not saying you can't go to entertainment. I'm just using this again as an example, but maybe this is a subscription to Netflix or to Spotify or something maybe that you don't use very often. I often highlight those things in red as kind of a mental note to go back and cancel them, or to reach out to the company to cancel it for me, or just something to look at further, or to maybe spend less on next month. Now, let's say that you decided to take your family on vacation and maybe your vacation was $5,000. You really spent a good chunk of money and you went all out for your nice vacation. But now if we go back to the summary page, you can see that your expenses are quite a bit higher than your actual income, meaning that you're either going into debt to go on vacation, which I obviously don't recommend doing, or you're having to pull $3,500 out of savings And maybe you don't have that, or maybe you're going into credit card debt or putting yourself in a bad financial situation. So you can see you are spending 188% of your income. So maybe this is where you're sitting, and that's exactly why you're watching this video, and that's completely fine. Everybody has to start somewhere. So again, make a mental note of if you thought you were estimating your expenses correctly or if you were way off. Now, the fifth step here is to pick a budgeting method that works for you. So I'm going to talk about quite a few budgeting methods here. Again, a lot of these fall under this first budgeting method that I'm going to mention here, but take these with a grain of salt. And even if you want to make up your own system, choose again whatever works best for you, as long as you are accomplishing those short-term and long-term financial goals. The first budgeting method is called the 50-30-20 method. This is a great budgeting method for essentially anybody that's new to budgeting. So essentially the way this method works is saying that 50% of your budget is dedicated to needs, or essentially fixed, non-negotiable expenses. 30% are dedicated to wants or variable expenses, and then the last 20% is dedicated to savings or even potentially debt. So think an emergency fund, retirement savings, paying off student loans, those kinds of things. Now, some potential pros and cons of this type of budgeting method include being great for beginners who are new to the world of budgeting, being very easy to calculate. You're just calculating an easy percentage. The third pro is that it prioritizes saving, which is great, especially if you're coming into this budgeting process without having an emergency fund in place. The fourth pro is that it helps balance needs versus wants and really helps you get your spending under control. And the fifth pro is that it's flexible, so you can adjust this as your income fluctuates. Now, cons for this budgeting method may be that it's not realistic for everyone's income or their financial situation. Maybe you're not making enough money to save money, or maybe you live in a very high cost of living area. And the second con is that it may be too broad. So everybody's financial needs are different, and this might be too broad for some people to grasp. Now, the next type of budgeting that falls under this 50-30-20 category is called envelope budgeting. And this is great for people who need to see essentially tangible money or who have trouble controlling their spending. And essentially how it works is that you start with an envelope for each expense category. So for example, you can have a fixed expense envelope, a variable expense envelope, and then a savings and debt envelope. Now, as soon as you get your paycheck, you can either go to the bank or go to the ATM, pull that money out, and then you're going to sort it and divide it into those envelopes. Now, going into this, you should know exactly what your fixed expenses are each and every month, and you should know exactly how much you want to save or how much money you need to pay off your debts each and every month. Now, in theory, there should only really be one envelope that you're not sure exactly how much you're going to spend out of, because the fixed envelope, you know exactly how much you spend on rent or on your mortgage or on your car, or any of those fixed expenses every single month. That should be largely unchanged. And the same can be said for if you're paying for an emergency fund, if you're paying off student loans. Typically, those amounts are also fixed and should not be changing. So you can allocate money to those automatically right away at the beginning of the month. So any money that is then left over after putting money into the fixed and the savings or debt category, you can then put into your variable expense envelope. And when you run out of money in that variable expense envelope, you're done spending for the month. Now, another way to do this, since paying cash is becoming a thing of the past, is to have your bank text you every single time something is charged to your account. Whether that's 25 cents or $500, you can keep track of how much variable expense money you have left either in a spreadsheet or on a piece of paper, or even again using an app. And then again, once you spent all of your variable expense money, you are done. You are cut off from spending for the rest of the month. So pros of this budgeting method include, if you stick to the rules, it's much harder to overspend since you usually can only use cash that you have on hand. It also helps you visualize how much money you're really spending, and it shows you a tangible amount of money. It also prioritizes any leftover money going towards savings or other financial goals. And some cons of this method could again be that it requires carrying cash, which again, most people don't regularly do. And two, it could be unrealistic if your income fluctuates. The next category of budgeting that falls under that 50-30-20 budget rule is called zero-based budgeting. Now, this is really great for people with a set monthly income. So if you make the exact same amount of money every single month and you want to know where every single penny is going, then this could be a good option for you. So in this method, you can see that your expenses essentially equal your income. or rather your income minus your expenses equals 0. So you can see the percentage of income spent here says 100%, and then your balance left over at the end of the month is 0. Now, this is not a bad thing, and I'm going to show you exactly why. So this method is not condoning frivolous spending. It's essentially saying that every single penny that you make is allocated towards something. So again, you can see all of our non-negotiables up here, all of our kind of nice to have things down here. And then you can see even things like a future house fund. So a long-term savings goal, $500, emergency savings, a short-term financial goal, $500, and then a 401k contribution, $464. So essentially, this is just saying that every single penny that you make is allocated towards some kind of financial goal or a bill. Now, some pros of the zero-based budgeting option include that it's obviously very flexible. You can arrange your goals as you want to. It can 2, help you reach your goals, and 3, it forces you to really reflect on your money and make sure that your money is all allocated in a way that's most going to benefit you. Now, some cons include that it can potentially be kind of time consuming. Again, figuring out exactly how much you can allocate to all of these potential house funds, short-term and long-term savings goals, and retirement funds. So that can be a little bit time consuming, but obviously is worth it in the long run. And the final con is that it can be tricky with unpredictable income. And the final budgeting option that I wanted to talk about today is called pay yourself first budgeting. Now, this is best for people who are focused on saving, so achieving long-term financial goals or saving for retirement. And how it works is that essentially before paying any bills, as soon as you receive your paycheck, whether that's every 2 weeks or every month, you put a predetermined amount. So again, you'll have to decide what's best for you in your circumstances into whatever your goal or goals are. So that could again be towards an emergency fund, a retirement account that you're trying to grow, a future house fund, or even a car fund. And then you pay for your fixed and variable expenses out of whatever amount is left over. So again, start in the same way by determining exactly what your take-home pay is, and then determine a number that you plan to essentially set aside to meet whatever long or short-term financial or savings goals you have. And then out of whatever is left over, that is the money that you have to pay for any needs and wants that we previously talked about. But a word to the wise, don't be too aggressive with these savings goals right out of the gate. Make it something that you can easily attain every single month. So for example, maybe you make $3,000 per month and you say that you want to save $2,750 for your future house. So you likely have more than $250 in other expenses and bills. And I certainly don't want you to overdraw your account or write a bounced check or anything like that. So make sure that whatever numbers you're choosing are manageable and can be recurring every single month without causing any financial problems. Pros of this method include that it's a low maintenance budgeting option, so there's a lot less details than some of the other budgeting methods that we previously talked about. It also helps to focus on big picture, long-term financial goals, and in the long run reduces impulsive purchases. And finally, it can be automated, so you can set up money to auto transfer to your savings account or even to a retirement account every single month so that you don't even essentially have to think about it. Now, some cons of this budgeting method include that it prioritizes savings goals over other possibly more lucrative options. So for example, paying off or paying down high interest credit card debt, or even investing in the market. Step number 6 in our budgeting toolkit is to adjust spending accordingly. So you chose one of the budgeting methods that we just finished discussing, but now you actually need to stick to it. And that could mean changing up your spending in a number of different ways. Are you paying for subscriptions that you don't even use? Are you dining out or ordering out food a lot? Could you switch to a lower cost grocery store? Could you shop around to save money on car, renters, or even homeowners insurance? And what are things that you could cut out altogether? And to be honest, this is the portion of budgeting that is often most difficult for people because it requires you to be very honest with yourself. Now, for example, you may love stopping to get Starbucks on your way to work every single day. And you may start out this entire budgeting process thinking that this is a need. You cannot start your day without your daily Starbucks trip. When in reality, this is really a want. This is a luxury. You can save money and make coffee at home. Or maybe you want a new toy for your car. Maybe you want to order something on Amazon. Maybe you want a new electronic device or a new gaming system. Again, those are all wants and not needs. So don't get those things confused in your mind. So if you really want to get ahead financially, you have to come to accept some of these not very fun, hard realities, at least until you can get your spending under control and you can stick to your budget. But I also want to point out an important point that I made in one of my previous budgeting videos, which is to try to save money on bigger ticket items. So maybe call around, like I mentioned earlier, see if you can get a better deal on insurance, or maybe try to save money on gas, or try to refinance, not in this market, but if interest rates go down, try to refinance your home so that you can pay less on it each month. So typically those things tend to pay off a lot more in the long run than, for example, cutting out the Starbucks drink that I mentioned earlier. So again, look at those big ticket items and see where you can save there first before simply cutting out everything that might make your just day-to-day life more enjoyable. And the final step in our budgeting toolkit is to review your budget regularly. Now, like I've said over and over and over again on my finance-based YouTube channel, I do this every single month on the first as I'm running numbers for all of the businesses, paying employees, doing all of those things. So if you need to think of it as essentially running a business, running the business of your life, then that's what you have to do. So on the first or at the end of the previous month, make sure that you're sitting down and actually going through every single statement, highlighting things like I showed you how to do, tallying things up, and making sure that you're staying on budget. And all that being said, I challenge you to stick to this for at least 2 months. So you can think of me on the first when you're running your own numbers. Know that I am sitting here at my computer running my numbers right along with you. Now, I know that finances and talking about money in general can be really hard, especially if you've been struggling. And some of you may start this budgeting process by actually suppressing even talking about finances or having an emotion about finances. But the more financially responsible habits that you begin to incorporate in your life and the more positive financial changes that you begin to see may actually be enough to shift that mindset so that you're actually excited to see how much money you have left over at the end of every month to either save or invest. And once you've put in the hard work and you've seen those positive financial associations, believe me that your entire financial outlook and how you view money will start to change. So I hope this video has been helpful or even inspired you to create a budget if that's something that you've been meaning to do. Let me know if you have any budgeting questions or any stories that you'd like to share with me in the comment section down below. Feel free to follow me on my social channels right here, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.